Hey, what's up everyone? Just wanted to make a quick video on some mixing tips. So this would be for some beginner and intermediate level producers. My name is Lax from Lax Lock or Lax and the Kesh. I do have a few signed tracks on a couple of labels, and I do make trance music, so I just wanted to share some mixing tips with you on how I achieve a much more balanced mix when I'm making my songs. With trance, it's quite quick, so you can see on the top left the BPM is 137 for this track. But for any electronic music genre or anything where you're actually just mixing anything really, this will be very beneficial. Because there's a lot of layers in trance, the engineering does have to be quite correct and has to be quite detailed. So I'm hoping these mixing tips will help you. So we've got a lot of layers. We can just go through them. Have all your atmospheres and your sweeps. These are your actual padded atmospheres in your trance. Then you have your percussions. Over here you can see open hat, close hat, shaker. You have your loops. And you have your snare and your kick. And your mid bass, and these are your acids and some acid lines. You have your melodic elements here in the blue, and then we have the main lead, which I'm still working on. So this track is partially done, but yeah, I didn't want to go through a full track, and I thought it'd be really good to make this video now. So the first tip that I want to give is reference tracks. So you can see at the top here, we actually have 3 reference tracks. And it is extremely important and something I probably didn't use as much of as I should have when I started off producing, is to really put some good reference tracks that you want a similar sound to in your tune. Naturally, when you're starting off, it's good to sort of try to replicate a song. And then that way you at least understand, especially the structure. So this structure is very important, and how one part of the song moves in from the next. So in your trance or any EDM structure, you have your intro, which is usually to the 33rd bar. And then you have your first drop into your breakdown, and then the main drop again. And you know, understanding different structures for different tracks is one really good reason why you should use references, but also how the sounds gel together. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to play these one by one. Yep. So I'm using Ableton 10. So if you are familiar with this, it's probably good for someone who understands producing at some of a basic level. I will be making some very basic Ableton courses. But these are just some good mixing tips. So we'll just go through these tracks one by one, and you'll see that all of them do sound distinctly different. Now, I always thought this was one way to make a song, you know, and one of the tips I can give is I have 3 because they have different characters and different elements, and I will guarantee you that each one of these songs has a slightly different mixing style, and you know, the same number of bassline layers or the same number of percussion layers would not have been used in all of these. So you know, you're meant to know the rules so you can break them. So we'll play this quickly. So you can see that's quite a professional track, and I'm just going to quickly flip through the other 2. Okay, so as you can see, they all have their own distinct sound, and I will just play my first drop as well in my track. Okay, So you can see that's partially done. There just needs to be a little bit more thickness that needs to be added to this. And you can see that. The reason I showed this on purpose is because you can actually see that when you're making a song, it takes time to build it. So you will notice that at the moment it sounds, if I'll switch it back and forth between my song and these songs, and you will notice how I can tell what parts sort of need beefing up. And the reason I use 3 is because each one of these 3 reference tracks has used a different sort of element to achieve that balance that they're looking for. So here we go. So now that we've played all of those, what is actually missing is in this particular section, and I played this section on purpose because it was quite hollow in a certain area. And what was missing, and it took me a while to figure this out, is the middle, where the vocal sits between 800K to 5 kilohertz, 5000. Is what's really missing here. So what I mean by that is if I open up this, we will see there's a EQ. Let me try to find an EQ. Okay, so there's the frequency spectrum. And we'll actually go to we'll go here, and this is Voxengo span, so it'll tell me, it's actually telling me the frequency of the song, okay? So we'll play it again. Okay, so we know that there's a certain area mixing. So use reference tracks, and then this is actually going to move on to tip 2. The tip 2 would be to use Voxengo span. So what makes Voxengo span does, it's a equalizer or a graph of sorts of all of the frequencies in your track. So you will see, I shouldn't have to explain low to mid to high and what sits in those regions. If you don't know that, I will be going through a much more basic video later, but this is assumed knowledge for someone who has maybe been making, who understands, the kick sits in the low end and your hat's sitting on the high end, and in the middle is sort of your bass lines around here and your sort of your lead elements around here. So Voxengo span is a really, really good plugin. It's free, and it's basically just a frequency analyzer. So I'll go ahead and play the song, and you'll see and then what I'll do is I'll solo the professional reference tracks, and then we can see the difference between our track and theirs. Okay. Okay, so you can see I've been able to very much match my track to their tracks. And you'll see my track actually opens up a little bit down the line, and how that creates that effect as well. So where my crosshair is, you'll see on the top left of Voxengo span, this is 1.9K. That is the frequency, 1.9K kilohertz. And if we play that, that's where the leads have just come in. So you can always tell that part was missing. We'll go to the old waveform, and we can see what the analysis looks like without that lead element, and then we can see it with it. So notice it's missing. Okay, so yeah, you can use Voxengo span to see where you're missing parts. Your bass lines could be missing some certain frequencies, and you wouldn't know it by hearing it if you're beginner or intermediate, but this can really help you. Of course, it's all about your ears, but ear training is something that takes a long time, and it takes time. So in that, you need to sort of understand that what you're hearing sits here. So if I just solo this bass lines, we can see where that sits, And subsequently, if we do our kick, so you're able to understand where everything sits, and it's really, really helpful with Voxengo Span. Okay, so that's tip number 2. I would say tip number 3 is a very, very important tip as well, is mixing in mono. Now, it's not something that I did a lot of when I first started producing, and to my detriment, I really think I should have. But mixing in mono can really allow you to understand how your mix will translate in other places. So many times you may have had this problem where in your studio the track sounds amazing, but when you take it out to a car or you play it on a system somewhere else, it doesn't sound as good. And that's probably because you haven't checked your mix in mono. When you check your mix in mono, what mono mixing allows you to do is actually get a really, really good representation of where the track will sound everywhere. If you look at professional tracks, they have to be mixed not only for studio monitors or headphones, but just coming out of a normal speaker on a phone, or for really, really big sound systems in festivals, which are also in mono. And the reason for that is because the stereo field, I'll come back here. We'll see I'll go to this utility down here, which we're hovering my mouse. Because the stereo field is left and right, mono is dead center. So if you imagine a really, really big stadium, everyone needs to hear the same sound, whether they're on the left, whether they're on the right. So if a producer has put a song, an element which is panned to the right in his track, then naturally, if someone's standing on the right of that stadium, they're going to hear that more. But that's not how you should be playing in big rigs. We want it to be in mono so they can hear the same thing. But the mix does change because it collapses itself in mono. What mono is when music first started off, they would record symphonies and orchestras with one singular microphone in the middle. And with your first radios, they were all mono. And then stereo came out, which was recorded with 2 or more microphones. And that's why we have stereo now, stereo width, and the stereo field. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to play these professional tracks one by one in mono first, and then we're going to play my track in mono, and then I'll show you. I have mixed this into mono already a little bit, but you'll see how it translates well. And if that works, and the core drive and the core of that track has not been lost, and the feel, you know it's going to translate well to another system. And also you'll pick out phasing issues. Now, if you don't know what phasing is, it is when 2 sounds occupy the same space, and they basically just don't sound good. Like they sound good in solo, but then when you play them together, they just sound muddy. And I'll make another video on phasing and phasing issues in much more detail later. But what we'll do is we'll put this in mono. So if you use utility, if you're Ableton 10 user, for any other audio workstation, I'm sure you will find whatever you like. But if you go to mono here, this is the master, so everything will be in mono from here. We'll just play this song. Okay. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just turn mono on and off so you can see what these songs are doing. And you'll notice that they don't lose their feel at all in a lot of these cases, because they retain their core elements, and that actually should give you a hint on where to even position elements when you're making them. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and do this again. And did you notice that the song had so much drive still in mono? So we'll do the same thing with my track. Okay, so I can already tell in mono the high end, such as the hats and everything, do get lost, so I do need to fix that. But see, in the stereo mix, I couldn't tell. I would just think that the hats are fine. So if I solo those hats, so you can obviously tell when I put them in mono, it's almost like the open hi-hat, which is this one. That sticks out, but the other ones, they lose their space as soon as I put it in mono, which tells me that a lot of that information is coming from the stereo field. I would look up the mono and stereo field as well, but then that gives me a good indication that if this track will sound good here in my monitors, they probably won't translate like that in most environments, so I do need to fix that and change my mixing. Now, that will take some tweaking, so I probably won't be doing that now. But yeah, 3 really, really handy tips, which I believe will really help your mixing. And I'll see you guys in the next video. If you do have any comments, let me know. I will be making more of these videos from now on. And yeah, as always, if you did find this helpful, give it a like, and you know what to do. All right, guys, cheers.